We are live in my upstairs. This is like the man cave layout. Pretty much, this is all of my stuff to the right here, and that's what I'm allowed. So
I feel like with a space like this with the plants and the view, I think it's a chateau now. I know not technically, but the vibe.
I think it's the blanket.
Yeah.
That probably does.
That looks important, I'll be honest.
It's the sound blanket.
Yeah.
It's I ordered it, and it cost me $1,100. And it's just looks like it came from a hospital used. No, my friends gave me that.
No,
but
I dig it.
Anyway, I think this is we can, I can cut stuff out if we need to.
Okay.
And then, of course,
I say my social security number every 5 minutes, so if you can just delete that each time.
there's a setting that filters out social security
Perfect.
numbers
Perfect.
on my editing program. I'll get that. I'll get that. All right. Well, this is, of course, History and Whatevea, and I'm James Manning III, and today my guest is Chadhurst Sharp.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for being here, and hey, tell us a little bit about yourself so the people out there know who's on the line here.
My name is Chadhurst Sharp. I'm 6'5", 280 pounds of raw muscle. I love long walks. No, I'm joking. I'm a comedian, a writer, originally from Philadelphia. Yeah. You know what's funny? I'm never good at writing my own bios. It's always exactly that short. But if you said, Chad, write me a bio for myself, I'd give you a solid paragraph.
Well, you have all the time. You can change it whatever you wish.
I'll just met it out over time.
Yeah, that's it. You have a very interesting topic for us today.
I do, hopefully.
And one that I was like, this is one of the, it's like a different one that I've actually looked at before, because with history, it really can be anything.
True.
And with this subject, the history started rather recently back in the 70s, right? So give a little intro of Indigo children as you know them.
So Indigo children, as I understand them, basically refers to a human that's born almost like a prodigy, right? They have a higher level of empathy, of intuition, of intelligence. Yeah. It's basically, just imagine like that really precocious 8-year-old that's giving you wisdom that they haven't even earned in terms of time and experience or, life experience yet, but seem to somehow know it. That would be probably one of the most classic examples of an indigo child, in my opinion.
Well, as I was delving into YouTube videos and whatnot about this subject, it's like, oh, well, okay, that's describing me. That's the way it seems,
It
at
very well
least,
could be.
Because people thought I used to have ADHD or ADD.
It's deeply tied to ADHD.
Well, I'm, in the whole learning disability, I have dyslexia. That helped me get extra time on tests. And,
Nice.
you don't like to follow authority if it doesn't make sense. It's like guaranteed.
I'm the same way. If you told me to breathe, I'd hold my breath until I died. Okay.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense, us both being comics, too, because this is something that it seems right up an Indigo child's alley, would be trying to heal others.
I would
through,
agree. I would agree.
Laughter.
Plus, comedy, in my opinion, involves a lot of introspection, which that's one of the things Indigo children are just able to do naturally. Presuming that you assume they're real, it is a pseudoscience, but it resonates with me. So,
Well, pseudoscience, you mean sort of outside the regular scientific community in agreement.
yeah, it's basically anything that's scientifically unproven and typically talked about by people that aren't doctors themselves. So it can be, not to step on any toes, it can be something as simple as like astrology, right? Or charting someone's spiritual path through the stars. That would be a pseudoscience. Or,
Right.
Things like that. Faith healing would be a pseudoscience, stuff like that.
Faith healing. Well, this is an interesting concept because what I could find were a lot of examples of people who are very like considered empathic
Mhm.
or could actually see things in another realm, like beyond spirits, whatnot. Very, very interesting to me because it's like you just don't see that kind of thing. And then I saw a clip of Anderson Cooper on CNN.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I don't really believe it. I don't know that I'm going to buy into this, but, we'll put it out there. Because there's this lady who could picture auras, and the aura is a part of this, too.
Aura readers, I've heard of them for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Wait, well, that was what was like, okay, that's why he's not buying into it. And it's very strange to see that.
Yeah.
But they actually do have a machine that can take pictures of auras.
Yeah, they had one recently at the country fair or the county fair, one of the two this past year. A friend of mine wouldn't had it done.
Whoa.
Yeah, she has pictures of her auras, and I'm fairly certain that the term indigo children is because they have an indigo aura. So
that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's where it comes from because it's like all blue in their readings, I guess.
Yeah.
Although I gotta say that having the aura reading camera is probably less expensive than buying all the old West get up and having your picture taken that way.
I would say.
I think, hey, would you like to have your aura pictured? I mean, that's original new age space thing to do.
I'll be honest. If someone said, do you want me to take a photo of you? And they pulled out one of those things where you have to go under the curtain and then a poof of smoke comes, I'd be actually more into that. I'd be like, well, this is going to be an amazing photo. This guy's not going to mess this up. He only gets like 2 of these max. So
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those plates that are actually in there. What got you interested in indigo children? What was your first exposure?
A lot of curiosity about my own self, to be honest with you, without sounding too egotistical. I feel like there's a lot of things I've always known and a lot of things I've always been aware of. And, my intelligence is one of my stronger factors in life. And that kind of led me on a rabbit hole. It started with just looking up intelligence and how intelligence works. And then that eventually led me to indigo children itself and the concept of it. And the biggest reason it resonates with me as well is the intuition factor. Have you ever heard of type 2 intelligence?
Type 2 intelligence? No. Please explain that.
It's the term for something like women's intuition or your gut feeling,
Gotcha.
Anything that within yourself, but consciously can't really rectify, right? So when you think of something, when you see a problem consciously, you're going through steps. You think, I'll do this, and this either is or isn't logical, and you'll go from there. Whereas your subconscious mind takes something, makes a conclusion on it, and doesn't justify it at all. So that's where you get gut feelings from. You're like, something's off, but I don't know what. And the reason the subconscious works that way is because it just kind of reviews everything you already know about a situation or a pattern of things. When I first found it, the clearest example I read about it was this NASCAR driver, Indy driver. He's going up the track. He's in the middle of a race going however hundreds of many miles per hour. And on a blind turn that he wouldn't normally stop at, obviously they know the track, that he wouldn't normally stop at, he does. He pauses, he brakes, what have you. And it turns out around the corner, there was a car. There was a pile up of cars. A crash had happened. Now, his type 2 intelligence kicked in because in his peripheral, he saw the energy of the crowd, not the energy of the crowd, but he literally saw the crowd turn and look somewhere else that wasn't him. And not that he recognized that consciously, but subconsciously, he took that in and thought there has to be something around there that they're all looking at. And that's an example of type 2 intelligence. Again, anytime you've ever had a gut feeling, type 2 intelligence, which is, again, just gut feeling, subconscious, that kind of thing.
Well, that kind of reminds me of if you ever stare at somebody and they don't realize you're staring at them, eventually they will look at you.
Exactly. Yeah. They just turn around because you feel someone looking at you, which logically that doesn't make sense.
You shouldn't feel
someone looking at you.
Yeah. The thing that gets me about it is there is a point in time where indigo children show up.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a line in the 1970s, right? And that was when the term was coined. And there was a specific person who coined the phrase.
Yeah,
but
I'll look her name up while you're talking.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I was like, we better consult the Oracle for the exact definition as well.
She's going to start a rival podcast just so she can be named. And she'll be like, James Manning the Third.
I'm sure she already has a podcast that's got a lot more listeners than I do. But she's been going for a while, so who knows?
Yeah, she's got some time on you. Nancy Ann Tap. I always want to say tape. I'm pretty sure it's tap with the two P's.
Nancy Ann Tap.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's just a lot of people who have that kind of intuition when they're like born and they're kids and they're growing up, but they're always told to just stuff it away. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, how many of these people are there? Are they also the same people who can be considered savants? Like folks that just have extraordinary mental ability?
I would have to assume so. I mean, although the term indigo children started in the 70s, conceptually, they always had to be there, right? So if you read about even Mozart as a kid, or there was this, he was a Korean, he's alive, Korean astrophysicist who could like speak 5 languages by the time he was 5. That doesn't make any sense logically. His brain and my brain and your brain and anyone's brain should develop roughly at the same pace. But this guy's speaking 5 languages before he's 5. It's like you're saying, savants, child prodigies, all of them, they have to at least have overlaps with indigo children, if not being one themselves.
It seems like it would have to be, because how else could your mind even be formed like that? Like, you would have to be tapped into something a little bit beyond.
Yeah.
There is a lot of people who have come through these sort of times of awakening, and that's what seems to be going on in our culture right now. Is there's so much of this just seeing through the garbage of what's been portrayed for the last 100 years.
Agreed.
Or whatever. And honestly, 100 years ago is probably when most of this stuff started happening. Because of Industrial Revolution, and the world really did change within the first 2 world wars.
Agreed.
And then right after that, you have the 60s, which was even more of a time of awakening, right? All
Flower
kinds
power
of different, right?
Yeah.
And then within the 70s, you end up having the emergence of these indigo children.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 90s, that actually got some traction. That's how long it took.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and it was like a big thing on the news, and there, even right into the 2000s. I think that Anderson Cooper was in like 2006 or something.
He's had white hair since I've known him, so I never know how old he is. It's like him and Steve Martin could be 70 or 40. I don't know.
Steve Martin, pretty sure real person.
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper, definitely robot of some sort. I think he's just some automaton that maybe he's just CG. Maybe he's been CG the whole time.
He was the first example of AI generated content, is what we're cracking the codes here.
Yeah, know, and the Indigo children help us. Or, maybe we are. I don't know. Most of what I could find was, "Are you an indigo child?"
Yeah.
It was like, famous indigo children. And it just brought up these clips of different talk shows that people were on. I mean, there was even one where it was a whole family full of talk shows, like a family of indigo folks.
I would say, to your earlier point about the overlap between indigo, if not the exactness of them, indigo children and savants, I would say to look up child prodigies, because there's so many of them. Like the guy that speaks 5 languages before he's 5. There's 3-year-olds that paint as though they've been painting their whole life. I mean, obviously they're few and far between, but they're out there.
Well, and the past life thing is also a reoccurring vibe with indigo children, where they actually talk about what happened to them prior lives in details that they shouldn't know anything
they shouldn't
about.
Even be able to lie that way. Like you're saying, the details should be beyond them if they're just making it all up. And
well, it's okay. As we were talking about before we started recording, I am a movie fan. And of course, what popped into my head was that scene in Terminator 2, where the psychologist is like, most of the time these are really scattered delusions, but this is highly complex, and she really believes that there's a Terminator after her, which of course it really was.
Little liquid man.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's beyond the idea that they could just be making it up, because, as a kid, they shouldn't have that in their brain yet.
I would agree.
Like things like happened to their body after they were dead, whether they were cremated or,
the like I said, the concept resonates with me. I've never experienced any past life regression myself, but again, there's just certain things I've always known where I'm like, I had to have been here before, if only for a little bit, right? I mean, yeah.
I've felt that way like my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange, and I don't know that we can air this episode after this, but no, it's sort of like, oh no, I've been through this before. Like I've been
Yeah.
around. It's not new. It seems like I wish that things had gotten better, and that they need to be better.
Yeah.
And I know they could be, but it's just not happening, and that's kind of a source of depression.
Yeah,
usually.
yeah, it's a little angsty to know that we're all damned, and to go from there and try to be happy, I guess. But
Well, it's just an intuitive thing where you feel these. It's something different. It's an outside of the physical senses. It's like the sixth sense,
I would agree.
right?
Something that I think about a lot that gives credence to what you're saying there. I do shrooms quite frequently. I've always been obsessed with hallucinogenics. Not that I've done all of them, but I've done, my fair share. And the experiences I've had on them, anyone I talk to that also does hallucinogenics has at least one good trip. There's so much overlap. You take too many shrooms and you're like, I was on a different plane of existence, speaking to my higher self, and everything. And everyone's that same way. It's not something you can necessarily measure, but why would we all be that way?
Yeah. Well, I can attest to that. Definitely a different plane. That look, there was no chants and drums when I went into the tent, but
Yeah.
while I was in there, it was going down, and I was just rolling around in my sleeping bag, communicating with something.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Well, it's that's always something too. Like one time, I swear my aunt was there. I couldn't see her. It wasn't like anything other than I could just sense.
That she was there.
Yeah, and that was her specifically. It wasn't like cloudy or maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
It was very pronounced, and it was soft and calm. It wasn't anything scary. It wasn't something anyone should be afraid of. It just really felt like my aunt was there.
I agree. I think it's for me, when I hit that level or that dosage, it starts with like a vibration, almost like you ever hear one of those 78 hertz, that's the frequency, this is something like that, and then from the louder it gets, the more I'm peaking. And I think to myself every time, what if this, like, I'm waiting for words, like we're people, we're waiting to hear words and things that we know are words, but what if this sound is the word, or the way that this communicates? Because when you're outside on shrooms and you look to the trees and the wind goes through them, you're like, yeah, I get it, man. I get it. Like, we're listening to all these sounds that we don't realize are words necessarily. And I think being able to experience that and be aware of that and be open to that and to seek that out, what has to be one of, a qualifier for indigo children. And a lot of people do drugs just for the fun of it, myself included. But those introspective, retrospective experiences are just so unique and yet not, that there's something there.
There has to be.
Yeah.
And there are so many people who are looking for that. And actually, throughout history, there have been a bunch of people who have found ways to measure frequencies and do things with their minds that shouldn't be possible. I don't know, there's a movie I saw once called What the Bleep Do We Know? Are you familiar with this?
No, I don't know that one.
So it just went through a bunch of these experiments where people use their minds to affect objects. And one of them was like where they took water and they sent energy into the water and froze it, and then did splices of it and measured what it looked like.
Yeah.
In its crystalline form or what have you. And it was always different depending on what energy was sent into it by a mind.
I gotcha.
Because it's one of those things where it's like the new age thinking where your mind is a transmitter and receiver of these energies, and the whole world is made up of nothing but energy, frequency, vibration, right?
No, yeah, I agree.
So there is some pseudoscience that has been made that kind of points in that direction. A lot of it was done in the 60s
Yeah, I mean, in the 60s,
50, you know.
the 60s was just a wild time for mental exploration. Even the government was trying to figure out if we can make soldiers telepathic, for war purposes and stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
let's see if we can get this acid to make people
Exactly.
into warriors.
Yeah.
You know?
Sign me up, Captain.
Yeah, here, just take this and drop it in everybody's coffee cup, and it's gonna be a fun day at the office.
Get the notepad out.
I get the notepad. Draw my aura, as you can see.
I like the idea because that sits with me too. That the brain and the mind and the spirit and the soul and all that is a transmitter, right? Because I like to imagine intelligence as a room, right? Because everyone's smart in a different way. I'm pretty sure it was Einstein who said it, but that could just be an internet misquote where he's like, "Don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree." Regardless of who said it, the point stands. A fish can't climb a tree, just like whatever can't swim or something like that. So I imagine like intelligence as a room, right? I'm a writer, so my key to that room is words. Someone else might be a mechanic, so their key to that room is engineering, or someone else might be a doctor, and their key to that room, whatever. But we're all accessing that. You know what I mean? That space, if you will.
Well, yeah. Because everybody has something that they're good at.
Everyone has something they're good at.
It usually takes people a lot longer to figure out what it is that they're good at. Mm-hmm. Because you have to, it's not about what you want to be when you grow up. It's what can you use your tool, like how can you use your tools?
Exactly, yeah.
And some people are just born with a different set of tools.
Agreed, 100%.
And a lot of times they get shut down by society because it's like not convenient. And I think that's kind of what one thing that we're getting at during this conversation is the fact that there are folks who can just say, well, I experienced this, and there's a lot of naysayers, so it makes it really hard to understand what people are going through.
Yeah.
But to have it happen so many times over and over again and have different people from different backgrounds having same experiences, going through the same thing, even to the point where they can be described.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's got to be something.
I mean, these are people that they're not in the same times, maybe different generations, different, physical locations, and all of these overlapping. Same thing with near-death experiences, and the common thing where the life flashes before the eyes, or you see the light, or not that everyone that has a near-death experience says they have that, but so many people do.
So, and since we were talking about psychedelics, I have never tried DMT, but there is something that people who have tried, they seem to describe like a mandala. And that's like something that a lot of people have described on that particular substance.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would more than one person have that experience if it was total
garbage and bunk and
how could that even be possible?
I've read one argument someone had against that was even right now we're talking about it. Let's say someone hears this podcast, goes and does DMT, and they're thinking about the mandala. But when you look at their older research, when people didn't just pick up a phone and immediately access something, even when it was just books and studies and this person going to this village or going here and then writing about it, there's still overlap. There's always this significant overlap that I think can't be denied, even if it can't be necessarily measured, by science.
Well, and there's even, I can't remember what they call the theory, but it's like a theory if one creature discovers something on one side of the planet, it happens on the other side of the planet too. Like something happens where a frequency is released and there can be energy transmitted between two beings that are nowhere near to each other, but yet they have the same idea around the same time. I'm sure that's proven. No. And anybody else who, wants to try DMT, just don't blame it on my podcast.
Man.
But, have fun. Or if you were going to do it, you were already going to do it.
You're going to do it. We're not stopping you.
And don't take my word for it. That's hearsay. So don't try DMT and say, well, James Mang III said the mandala was going to appear. And it's like, do you know what a mandala is?
You gave me LeVar Burton vibes. You're like, don't take my word for it. Read it in a DMT book. The God molecule.
I think if anybody was going to take DMT and describe their trip to me, that's who I'd want to do it.
I'd be here for
LeVar
that.
Burton.
Come on.
And if you're listening, you can come on my podcast anytime. We'll
Yeah.
talk about Star Trek or reading Rainbow or
DMT.
DMT. I think we'll start with the DMT.
Yeah.
And then we'll walk through it.
There we go. There we
Yeah.
go.
You can get the pins now. We get Indigo children.
Yes.
That was actually my fault, and I'm the host of the program. Yeah. That's great. I'm like, let's intentionally derail this into a place it doesn't need to go.
I just like the idea of you getting a cease and desist from LeVar Burton. He's like, I would never do DMT. That's not really his, I don't know if that was a LeVar Burton impression, but I would never do DMT.
would never.
would never do that. Come on, man.
I could see him with a little Star Trek badge on, and he's like, I would never, cut it out, man. Never.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Because that it's just like our cell phones. They can just, they're listening all the time. That's basically Alexa.
It is.
Way to go, Star Trek. I saw it while I was on DMT.
Yeah.
No.
It's a callback.
Well,
a present call too, I guess.
I can call back on the podcast, but on stage, I'm not having it.
You don't give yourself enough credit.
I've got to call back, and I'm sure it'll be like diarrhea or something. Yeah. It won't be of the metaphysical. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I got a lot of those jokes, but that kind of thing has always been put down in our culture. Mm-hmm. So psychedelics, spiritual encounters beyond like religious spirituality, even things that people see in the sky are demanded to be wrong because who knows what they are, and we can't prove that, but obviously something's going on. So if there's that many people, just like in the metaphysical, I wonder what it is. What happens to somebody when they're growing up from the time that they're kids and maybe they have these feelings, but they're told that they're, need to be quiet about it. Or, I wonder what the change is or why some people have these like more intuitive experiences. And is psychedelics a way to bridge the gap between the two realms, the physical and the metaphysical? Is that a way that some more normal folks who don't have those experiences can take a peek into it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really sure. I too have tried the psilocybins many times, and that's one thing that I've found interesting is that not only does it seem healing, and it drains you a little bit.
Oh, it does, yeah.
But you always feel different.
You're at peace. You're at ease. You recognize you're a drop in an infinite ocean, I guess. And I would say when it comes to the normal person being open to those experiences, I think one of the issues with that is the perceived contrasting nature between science and spirituality, right? People put it as though there's one or the other. And a country like ours, any country like, us or most of Asia or most of the UK, we're such developed countries by these tangible feats, and a large majority of those tangible feats are because of science. You know what I mean? Someone building the right metal or exporting the right material. So we put such an emphasis on that, and we don't leave room for spirituality. You'd be hard pressed to find someone that is working on the next advancement in tech that is also thinking about how they play a role in the energy of the universe. I'm not saying the person isn't out there, but usually those are separate people in separate worlds entirely. If you go to poorer cultures or cultures that aren't as technically advanced, they typically are the ones that push the boundaries of spirituality. They're the ones that believe in it. They're the ones that have, medicine doctors that live off the plant life as opposed to pharmaceuticals and whatnot. And, it's easy to say that one's better than the other when you're the person, like here, where like science is better. If you were the person there, they'd be like, I don't care about science because here's the fact. And there's just, it should be like a binary star, spirituality and science kind of orbiting each other as opposed to, again, the perception that they're opposites entirely.
They shouldn't be completely disconnected from one another.
I wouldn't say so, no.
Yeah, and that's one of the strange happenings within this realm, too, is where you have scientists who have found ways to kind of prove some of the spiritual or the unseen. Like infrared is a good way to put it. Like that's a
Good point.
frequency that we can't see.
100%.
But it's almost like, with UFOs or something. If you put it out there that you believe in indigo children and you're looking at ways to study them and what their characteristics are, and to actually prove that that is something that really happens, your integrity as a scientist is at stake.
Yes.
Because there are so many naysayers that don't believe that there is any connection.
You're fighting against the... I mean, even if you're not trying to prove science, do you remember... Before we understood how germs worked, there was the doctor that was like, we should wash our hands more. And then he was laughed out of his career and basically passed away in an insane asylum. Have you ever heard this?
No.
There was it was like in the 1800s or whatever. There was this guy, and I'll look up his name in a second, but he started working at a maternity ward, and there was a high rate of death for expectant mothers. The reason for that was, at that point in time, culturally, socially, people didn't wash their hands. They didn't know you should do that. So you'd have these doctors handling corpses or infectious wounds, and then immediately, with those same hands, go and deliver a baby. Infection happens. This guy realizes the connection, says we should wash our hands, publishes a paper on it, and his entire all of his peers are like, you're crazy. That's not how that works. You're ridiculous. It's the this thing or that thing, not that. He loses his career, loses his position. The guy that comes in after him is also a naysayer, goes back to not washing his hands, and of course the morality rates that had been lowered when the other guy was in charge spiked under this naysayer. And it wasn't until shortly after his death that we actually recognized on a large scale that this dude was right. This dude that had been laughed out of a career for something that they could scientifically prove. So imagine, like you're saying, a scientist trying to do something they can't prove, like indigo children or measuring spirituality or the worth of it or the use of it or anything like that.
Well, I mean, we were joking about the fact that there are people who claim to have these cameras that can photograph your aura. Is it just a spectrometer of sorts? Like how, I mean, that's how we discover what energy is being consumed within a star, is the colors, the light spectrum colors that it gives off. And they each have a signature that tells us what's in them. And then there's mathematics to judge the size of something so far away, which is, I mean... I don't even understand how that came to be. There's these really, the smart people of the past, Galileo and, all of these people built on theory after theory that was proven wrong.
And they themselves had a lot of just bupkis theories that didn't work at all. It's,
Yeah, that's very true. And a whole bunch of inventions that never went anywhere. My stoner brain is like, no, you can't have the actual names of these folks. But there was like the guy that discovered steam, because I might have to even look this up because it's too ridiculous that I don't know who it was. But he made this little device that was, it was a steam engine essentially. Like put water in it and you heat it and it spins in a circle. Or like, well, that was nobody knew about steam back then.
I hear what you're saying.
All it did was spin in a circle. They didn't know that you could use that to power a train.
Where they're like, will this make my crops better? Yes or no?
And no was the answer. Because all these things they all build on each other, and there has to be a way of finding out what's beyond. Like there has to be some surefire way that is it the gnats? It's the gnats. There's plants in here, and the gnats come out.
I'm not judging nothing. I've got gnats too. I was just shooing one away.
I've been dealing with that myself. I'm not getting an answer for who invented that little steam engine, but it was it's in the 1800s is the first guy to actually make a steam engine work. But then the discoverer of it. I'm going to have to cut all this out because this is a history podcast. I'm like, I don't know. We weren't supposed to be talking about Galileo.
I think it adds
or
authenticity,
Copernicus.
I do.
It's got a certain tangy flavor.
Je ne sais quoi.
Anyway, we're not talking about Steam. We're supposed to be talking about Indigo, children.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. So, when is it going to be, do you think, that we could actually prove that there are entities that exist in a reality beyond our own?
I think, and this isn't to degrade AI and the advancements that are surely still coming there, but I think as we move more and more to this computerized form of intelligence where everything is eventually going to be scanned through that and developed through that, we'll move further away from the spiritual part of it, because it's just going to give us numbers and data and patterns. And I don't know if spirituality necessarily conforms to that all the time. It's a lot more intangible. It would also take a big cultural shift, like you're saying earlier, for enough scientists with enough resources and grant money and all that to do research on it in any meaningful way, and be taken seriously with whatever they find or don't find, you know?
Well, it has to be somehow proven. And that's always the thing, right? How do you prove that something like this exists?
Now, see, that's an interesting thought to me, because it kind of makes you question how you weigh your self-knowledge against real knowledge, right? So, like, you know certain things, but it can't be proven, but you still know those things. But at the same time, if you go through life with that mentality, you'll just always think you're smarter than the scientists. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's so tricky to try to kind of balance that out with what you know is a fact within yourself versus what other people don't know or don't want to know, which leads me to the question of, do I need it proved? I believe in it so much that it is true almost, right? And which is a self-defeating form of thought, to say I need no other evidence than my own, but that's what it feels like, because it feels so intuitive that this is beyond question almost, you know?
Well, something similar is said by anybody who achieves great things. I mean, Muhammad Ali would say things like, you have to believe it and affirm to yourself that you believe it, even if, it's not true. You have to still, like, that was I was listening to a bunch of his quotes today, and I mean, that's somebody who really achieved the highest of heights in boxing.
I agree.
But that's the kind of mentality that you have to have. You just have to know. And then people ask you, how do you know? Well,
any athlete, any entrepreneur, anyone that has literally made their own way in the world, exactly what you're saying, they know to be true. But all those people that are asking them that, how can you explain that to them? How can you explain that I believed I was going to win, and in this buzzer beater moment, it made the biggest difference in the world? You know, it's like when you're playing sports growing up and that one kid just gives up and he's like, I don't want to play. Or he or she's like, I don't want to play. And you're like, well, not with that attitude. You don't get out of here. You're going to make us lose.
Yeah, you're definitely not going to play that.
You're not going to play that.
Yeah, you're certainly not going to win.
You know.
Well, and even you brought up the point about somebody who was like, I think we should wash our hands.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like,
so obvious now.
Get rid of this guy.
This guy's. Whoa.
You want to wash your hands?
Uh-huh.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that they thought that, before that time, that bathing was bad for you.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I keep ending up with these parasites.
Mm-hmm.
What should I do? Well, get a little dog and hold it on yourself.
You'll be fine.
The fleas will go on the dog, and you're good.
Poor Fido.
Yeah, I know.
Poor Fido.
That's why Paris Hilton has a little dog. That's why I have a little dog.
Uh-huh.
He keeps the things out of my beard.
There you go.
And
does a little grooming, a little maintenance.
Yeah. It's very...
Oh my God! Do you remember how much heroin and stuff they used to put in cough medicine back in the day? And these were scientists then, which again, not to downplay science. It's very important, but it's all such a balance.
Well, and they didn't know that these things like heroin and opium were considered addictive.
Yeah.
That whole thought pattern of things that could be habit forming to a point where they will physically cause you problems has not even come to fore yet. And it's like the whole hand washing thing, it relates to Indigo children in that way. I think it's because you have to start somewhere, and then the progression has to occur to the point where more people understand that washing their hands is a good thing.
it required such a cultural shift, right? So right now, I did a lot of. I'm a copywriter, and one of the things I've written most about is rehab, right? So if you type in what are the effects of alcohol and ketamine on the brain, you might get an article from like a rehab clinic somewhere in California that I've written for. And so I've done a lot of research on it from scholarly sources. And for the longest time, for example, drug addiction, the onus of that addiction was always placed on the person doing it. They're like, oh, they can't get off this drug or they can't stop drinking because they lack the willpower. Now we view it more as a disease. And it's that kind of mental shift when it comes to things like indigo children or spirituality that has to happen. We have to be able to look at it a different way entirely. And that just takes generations, because when you like I'm saying, when you believe something that deeply and you know it to be true, everything you experience just confirms that more for you.
Well, let's bring it back around to stoner brains. Like, yeah, just like cannabis, which is actually true because cannabis was used from time immemorial by healers. And then there was just this point in around the 1920s or something like that, where it's like, oh no, we're gonna get rid of all this, it's bad.
It's bad for you.
Yeah, even though we've been using it to fight wars, hemp for victory and things like that in World War II and World War One. The Napoleonic Wars were fought a lot over the hemp trade because they needed that for ships, like everything,
vital resource,
everything aboard ships. The first laws pertaining to cannabis, hemp in the United States was like in Virginia in the 1700s, requiring farmers to grow a certain amount. Most of the papers that the U.S. government printed on right up until the 1920s was cannabis hemp paper.
I did not know that.
The Declaration of Independence itself, written on hemp paper.
Are you telling me the Declaration of Independence is smokable?
Well,
I know, but
you know what? You could roll a fat doob out of the Declaration. I mean, just the bottom corner of it, like not the whole thing.
I'm not Nicolas Cage. I'm not stealing it.
It would probably taste like Benjamin Franklin's ass or something.
I was immediately thinking taint.
Yeah, it's like the worst part of Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
It's like his gout-infected toe is where
the imagery. The imagery.
Well, this like wonderful thing that has been throughout history all of a sudden became demonized and politicized in a negative light, and to where it's 2023 and we're still fighting with this, and there's a lot of progress being made.
It is like $1 billion industry now.
Well, it used to be have more money.
That's fair, actually.
Right, yeah, and that's a very good. I have good language when I say used to be more things. But this is the kind of strange mental gymnastics that people are forced to do because they haven't put the time in to think, why is this bad?
Yeah.
I find that the demonizing of cannabis is really close to the same demonizing that happens with spirituality and people who claim to see things that most can't see or don't understand. And anything that can't be understood is usually put right off the bat anyway. I don't know what this is. Forget it,
I think one of the things that shoots anyone who believes in spirituality in basically any form in the foot is that, let's say I'm a scientist. I sit here and I say, James Manning III, I'm a neurosurgeon. You can measure that immediately. You can say, no, you're not, because you don't know this or you don't have that, or boom. But if I say I'm an empathic psychic who can see your life chart, how can you really say no to that? If I'm clever enough to spin some words around. So unlike science, which is easier to prove that someone is capable and, of their job, if you get a bunch of people in spirituality in the room, you're going to get at least 20% just con artists that you can't say are con artists and also say in the same breath, this person isn't. And it just makes it that much more of a barrier to overcome.
Well, yeah, because seances were like that.
Oh my God, yeah.
And they were really big back in this same time period that we're talking about, 1920s, 30s. Seances were a big thing. And there were a bunch of con artists who would strap themselves to chairs, but the arm of the chair just comes off and they undo the strap and they move the bell and they do all this. But there are other people who have had different experiences that lead them to believe that perhaps there was some sort of connection
Energy in the room. I mean, how can there not be? But at the same time, how do you prove that guy was a liar?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, and there's been you just can't.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the belief factor. But then there is a lot of evidence from cultures, especially ancient cultures from all over the world that have sort of this idea of spirituality and spiritual beings, and it's just completely discounted. It's the same thing that happens when you think, oh, well, cannabis is bad because it'll make you play the piano crazy and jump out the window and strangle somebody.
Jimi Hendrix was up to no good.
Yeah,
he was up to no good.
That rock and roll music, it's gonna ruin the earth.
I want to tell people. I have a small line about it, but I don't think people understand the connection between this is like creativity and the affinity towards certain substances sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
It's
heroin is a big one for musicians.
Oh yeah.
And it's caused a lot of overdose, but I think it's also caused a lot of hit songs.
Yeah, right. And you're like, oh man, stop that. But
I know it's like that ain't music's great, but maybe you should lay off. But that's the thing is like there's also alcohol is a big one that influences a lot of musicians and does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But cannabis is always a part of the music scene and any creative scene.
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot of crossover, but if there's one thing that really does crossover between almost all creatives, it's got to be cannabis.
I would have to agree.
And alcohol is a very close second, but it's so strange how you say rock band, you're gonna conjure up drugs.
Oh yeah.
I mean that comes with the territory.
I read Nikki Sixx's biography for some reason. I know all about it. I did, and I still don't know why I read that book actually, but still, I hear you.
Nikki Sixx's book.
Yeah.
You really read that?
Yeah, actually, the best reason I have for reading is at the time I worked in a call center, and someone was like, "Do you want to read this?" And I was like, "Sure." And next thing I know, I'm 400 pages into this guy's life, and I'm like, he's in a closet right now? Wow.
Just getting wild.
Just getting wild.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to be a rock star until you figure out what that's really about.
Okay, so that leads me to another question, right? We're talking about spirituality. We're talking about indigo children. What do you think, and I don't have an answer for this, I'm asking you, what do you think about the effects of corruption on people that have those perceptions, right? Those people that can write really well or paint really well or compose music really well, whatever it is. And then someone comes along and just gives them money and power and all these earthly temptations and kind of dims that light almost. What do you think the correlation there is, if any?
I think we can be trained. Like if we allow ourselves to go under hypnosis, then hypnotism works. But if you are staunchly against it and you don't allow that entry, it doesn't seem to work because there's no buy-in. There's no way that you actually believe it. Now, when it comes to the metaphysical and spiritual side of things, I think that can be squelched. It can be forced down. It can be put away.
Yeah. And
especially, it's like, well, I got all this money here. How do you want to do this?
Let's do it.
Yeah. I see what happens to me is like, of course, I'm a big country music fan.
Fair.
But I hear on the radio the most awful garbage. It's total crap. It's formulaic.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why people like it. And I guess it's just, I don't know. Everybody has their own tastes and everything. But there's something about certain feels in music that I just find repulsive. Like I can, for some reason, beat's good and everything's sounding fine. It's mathematically, formulaically, lyrically, it's okay.
Yeah.
But there's something about all of it together that makes me sick.
Yeah.
It's like, it just doesn't make sense. It seems disingenuine and lacks soul.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Lacks soul and the disingenuous of it. Because I mean, you can make a song about anything, and if you're somewhat talented and it's true to you, it's still going to sound better than some overproduced pop song. Not to say pop can't be, I shouldn't have chosen genre, but some overproduced, shallow song, whatever it's going to be.
Well, in good songs, no matter who is writing them, tend to come to the surface one way or another. And there's so many different reasons for that, and nobody really knows. But there just is a certain flavor to a song that was written from the heart.
Yeah.
Because that, with music, I feel like it's all about trying to convey emotion.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I guess all artwork is that way.
Yeah, but I think music is one of those things that it transcends, I think, a lot easier than other art forms. I can't write music myself, wish I could, but it transcends, right? So like even if I hear I'm Every Woman, I'm sitting there and I'm feeling like every woman. If I hear Copperhead Road, I'm like, just like my daddy and my daddy before. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it just immediately transcends. It's a quick buy-in too. If I write a novel, of which I've written many, buy them all. Again, my name is Chadhurst Sharp. You still have to get 30 pages in before you're, invested necessarily. With the song, you got 20 seconds and you're in it, man. You know,
Yeah, and you will make that decision quickly.
But yeah.
It's like I can't even handle... There's some music that I'm like, turn it off.
Get out of here.
Like, I get violently angry when I hear that, what is it, Kid Rock did that Sweet Home Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
I get violently angry. It's like, turn that off right now, right now. God. I cannot stand it. It makes me queasy to hear. And maybe he wrote it and he's doing it because he really likes it. The other part of me knows.
Listen,
it's all about that stack of cash.
Any subpar cover, I'm like, why does this exist?
I know,
first of all,
it's so bad.
Especially when it's like by a musician or a singer that is of an exceptional skill or voice control. You can't just hit that just because you can sing or just because you can play music. So what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, and I think what I'm trying to get at is the fact that it's called soul.
For a reason.
Yeah. And that is almost something... I think that the soul is something that we believe in, but isn't provable.
Yeah.
It's not something that science can say, yes, there's a soul present, or no, there isn't. And usually it's the spark of life.
Yeah.
But, I mean, is it?
I hear what you're saying. I've always imagined my soul as like I couldn't even tell you the shape, like an oblong, like imagine one of those Alexa pills, or like a pill. I imagine like a giant blue glowing pill in my chest. And to me, that's what my soul looks like. I guess that's the way it's always looked. But yeah, like you're saying, the acknowledgement of the soul on any level, I feel like most people understand that, with the exception of devout atheists, which nothing against them, I'm not talking, but with the exception of devout atheists, pretty much everyone believes in at least some concept similar to a soul.
Right, because it's moving from this existence that we are here in the material plane to the metaphysical plane, to the celestial, to the next realm.
Anything that basically states that we are more than what we look like, that this is just a shell or a form, a temporary thing. Now we're speaking my language, you know.
Well, it to me, it's always felt like this is some sort of biomechanic suit, and somehow we got put in here, and we're at the controls.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly us. So like the form that we are now is different from who we really are.
I agree.
And that exists in that realm and in this realm at one point, at all points, right? And it's strange that you had a way to describe.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've never physically tried to picture in my mind what my soul would look like. I've always thought of it more like like a water molecule in the drop of an ocean.
I hear you.
And that's what we all are, is like we're all part of this massive ocean, but we're experiencing it individually at the moment.
See, now the idea of a drop in the ocean and all of us being that same thing, that's another overlapping thought when it comes to most spiritual things, is this acknowledgement that we are all, or if you do enough shrooms or hallucinogenics, this acknowledgement that we are all one thing, you know what I mean? We're almost just the universe itself experiencing itself in all these different configurations and forms. And, I am the bird. The bird is the guy that I knew in 4th grade. That person's the woman across the world. Like, we're all just one fabric, you know?
Well, and that is somewhat proven scientifically, because everything's made up of, atoms
Yeah.
and, protons and neutrons. And there's even something probably smaller than that we can't see. It's all the same. And it's strange how some people can either, it depends on how you view it.
Yeah.
I mean, it could either be disconnected or it could be more based in reality, or however you want to picture that. But the idea of indigo children is like forcing the narrative that there's something beyond.
Yeah.
Because most of them, in what I could find, they were like, they don't really care whether or not you believe it.
Yeah, because it feels so, and see, that's another thing, even that phrasing, that there's something beyond. Because if indigo children, if anything like that is to be believed, which obviously I believe, it's not even that we came here, it's that we left somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's like, this isn't even the beginning, this is just another step. And presumably there's a step after as well.
Well, and humans are particularly fascinated by that line, right? I've said it a few times, like, I'm not really afraid of being dead. I'm not worried about that because I feel like I've lived a pretty good life, and whatever's waiting for me over there is probably not all that bad, Might have to fess up to a couple of things, but, it's not going to be too bad.
Yeah.
Now, maybe...
Well, see, even this is what I mean about the overlaps between, creatives and indigo children and all that. I think that same thing about death. My shoulder tattoo here, it's Latin. It just says "Remember death," memento mori, which is remember your own mortality, and to go from there.
Oh, the Romans loved that. They used to say it all the time because death was always around the corner.
I mean, anyone born before 1901, that's a wrap.
Right.
That's
you 30 years for sure, and then after that, if you make it that far, is a miracle.
God,
in most. But yeah, that is something that we always deal with, is our own mortality. And I think helping us deal with that is the fact that there might be something beyond, and it's not just over.
Yeah.
But the thing is like that transition period before that's the part I'm not so great on. Like that seems like it's not going to be
no
great.
one has the answers.
Nobody has the answers.
Yeah.
That's true. But why is it that some people get these extra gifts, or what is it that allows people to see, I don't even see things when I'm tripping, but I sense things. I mean, it's like I feel them, but I don't see specifically.
That very question is what initially led me down the rabbit hole of how intelligence and indigo children and all that work. You know what I mean? And a lot of it, I mean, not that I have an answer as to where we get it from, but there's so much of who we are that is so far out of our control. Like, not even socially. I'm not even talking like that. I mean, like genetics, right? You can be born with a better chance of being intelligent, or a better chance of being empathic, or a better chance of this or that or the other. And that's just, man, how lucky do we get that we're conscious adults and fair enough health, and, it almost gives you survivor skill for something you don't even remember surviving,
Well, I mean, I've even heard the idea of, you pass down physical genetics, but there's like learned things that are passed down through your ancestors as well. Experiences they had.
Yeah.
Changed existence for them.
Genetic trauma and genetic memory, that's something that's been more scientifically quantified in recent years, mostly because of how trauma impacts your cells. And if you were to go out and get into not a car crash, that is trauma, but if you were to survive like a genocide somewhere and then have a kid, that kid kind of inherits part of that trauma. Maybe it's the spike in the cortisol or something like that. The first time I read anything like that, it brought about the fact, you know what uncanny valley is, yeah?
No, I'm unfamiliar.
It's a visual thing where something looks human, but not quite human enough. Like, imagine my face, but my eyes are 2 inches bigger, or something like that, or my face is a little too long. Uncanny valley, because it makes us so innately uncomfortable. Everyone innately uncomfortable. That's one of the reasons AI images were so creepy for so long. And then how we're all afraid of the dark at such an age. And it begged the question, why are we all afraid of things in the dark with sharp claws? Why are we all afraid of uncanny valley? For the same reason people were afraid of heights, because we used to be afraid of falling in the dark. You know what I mean? So that one's an easy one to track. But the other two things,
well, I'll share this with you. I am insanely uncomfortable with anything having to do with tunneling or underground
Fair.
I just become wildly uncomfortable, and it doesn't make sense. I'm not like claustrophobic. I can handle small spaces.
Yeah.
But the thought of going underground where you could cave in at any time,
Anytime.
wildly uncomfortable.
No, I hear you.
And it doesn't make sense because I've never been in an experience.
You never
that
been in a
would-
tunnel underground?
I mean, I have. I've been in
okay.
the like caves and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that those caves have lasted a long time. They're not going to cave in on me.
Fair.
But still, I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
And I even went and did some like actual cave exploring where you're crawling around and stuff.
Wouldn't be me.
I didn't like it, and I've never done it again.
Hmm.
And there was one episode of, it was like something on Netflix. It was like a series of these horror kind of movies, and there was
Anthologies.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like the Cabinet of Curiosities.
Yeah. Guillermo del Toro.
There's one in there that is about a guy who he's like a grave robber. He works at the thing.
Yeah.
You know the
I
one?
do know that one, yeah. It's based
I
on a
had to
Stephen King story.
I had to stop watching the series, man. I could barely make it through that because he was crawling through the underground, and like he gets to this point where it's like a crypt, and I was like, great, this is a crypt. There's a way out.
Yeah.
And he goes back after the gold, and now I was so physically perturbed by this. I can't even explain, and it does not make sense to me.
Well, one, let me correct myself. It wasn't Stephen King. It was H.P. Lovecraft, although Stephen King also has a rat story. But, yeah, that was one of my
Lovecraft, huh?
standout episodes, too. I love when characters... Like, sometimes in lesser stories, characters can make whatever choice they want, and the writer's going to put them wherever they want. But in stories like that, where the guy could have had freedom, but was like, I'll risk it for this, even though I'm clearly in a bad situation. I'm like, yeah, you had this coming, man. This was, just good writing.
And I can still remember the feeling in my chest I got when he went back into the tunnel. I was like, no.
Yeah,
Like I couldn't do it. And it was the strangest feeling because I've never experienced anything like that. And it just made me, it just still makes my skin crawl because I feel like possibly I have been underground and that did happen, or maybe a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And this time I'm like, I am not doing any underground at all. Like if somebody were to be like, I got all this money, do you go underground? And I'm like, keep your money.
I'm out. I'm out.
Not doing it.
I don't blame you. See, an Indigo child would never do that. We'd be like, no thank you.
I'm grounded enough. Yeah, that's it. Well, all right. Well, hey, we are at over an hour, and I know you got things to do, but hey, thanks for joining me on the podcast. And some people might argue, oh, well, that wasn't much history. You couldn't even remember the Steam Dude, but I believe truly that history happens every day. And the only thing that separates our reality from history is tomorrow morning. Like there's really nothing.
James, say it louder for the people in the back, please.
Tomorrow morning will come, and I'll have to go to work. But there is something there when, to us, peering into the past, it doesn't have to be 100 years ago. This phenomena started happening in the 70s, and that's when people started taking notice of it, and that things were changing. So that is a part of our history as humans, and whether people want to agree with that or not, or if it's proven or not, well, I'm not really concerned because I'm a comedian. And I think we're the last, we are the last philosophers, and we have we don't have anything to lose. Like, oh, what? I heard you're talking about indigo children on your podcast. It's like,
first of all, if that person came to a show for that, I'd be like, great, bigger audience.
Yeah.
Bigger audience.
All right, so all the believers over here and the non-believers over here. All right, now get them,
Yeah, debate vigorously.
Well, I mean, it's always fun to go down these rabbit holes and have a chance to sit down and chat with you. So Chadhurst Sharp, thanks very much for coming on History and whatever. And yeah, tell everybody where they can find you and read your novels.
One, thanks for having me, James Manning.
Absolutely.
I appreciate James Manning III. I appreciate you. This flew by. I didn't expect anything less. If you are interested, anyone out there that's listening, if you're interested in reading urban fiction, contemporary romance, thrillers, or just any character-driven story, please check out my work. My author name is my name, Chadhurst Sharp. You can find me on Amazon. Once you start typing in my name, because of how long it is, I will just pop up. Check out Aughton Heights, Ugly on the Inside, The Wives of Isabella Danger, The Ether and the Noise, and my Dr. Corrigan series as well. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, absolutely. And keep an eye out for Chadhurst stand-up, too. I'm a big fan of yours. I always enjoy what you have to say in the stand-up realm. And, hey, this was really enjoyable. I'm glad that you brought this up because I had no idea about Indigo children until we had a chance to talk about it. So, hey, thanks a lot. And that's it for History and whatever.